Good morning. Welcome back to Coffee with the Callers. I'm Father James Misko, and I'm here along with
Father Doug Jeffers.
And we're here to talk a little bit about books.
That's right.
Father Doug, as you may or may not know, is quite a theologian. I call him our resident theologian here at the parish, partly because he's fresh out of seminary, but also partly because he's really smart. So you're welcome. So I always go to Father Doug when I have a theological question, and he's quite helpful. So we thought it would be really cool this morning if we showed you some of the books that we're reading, and then some of the books that are our go-tos when we need to answer a question or maybe come up with a cool theme for a homily or for a talk. So Padre, what'd you bring to share with the folks today?
I got 3 books here. One of them I'm reading right now. This is Edward Fesser's 5 Proofs of the Existence of God. So it's a little presentation of natural theology, and I've been really
Okay, what does that mean, natural theology? When you say that, what does that mean?
That's a good point. So when we talk about theology, we mean the study of God, and usually when we just use that word, we're talking about sacred theology, which is the study of God drawing on His revelation to us, His word that He's spoken to us. But natural theology is it's called natural because we can do it without the help of a revelation from God. And so natural theology is really part of philosophy, and it's the approach to God just through human reason. So without any appeal to scripture or to the teaching of the church or anything like that.
Great. So like something like a term that I like to use, capax Dei, which is Latin for the capacity for God, that the human person is made with capax Dei. That would be natural theology, with the capacity to understand God, or at least to approach God through his or her own sort of rational abilities.
That's right. There's
Cool.
that openness to God right in our nature.
Neat. What's the name of that book again?
It's 5 Proofs of the Existence of God.
Very
by
good.
Edward Fesser.
All right, and what else you got there?
Then I've got, this is one of my favorite books. This is Father Garrigou Lagrange's 3 Ages of the Interior Life. This is the first volume of it.
Was he Father Garrigou, was he a Benedictine?
He was a Dominican.
Oh, pardon me, I'm sorry,
Yes.
Dominican, yes. The Dominicans are into theology, the Benedictines into liturgy. All right, very good. And what's your big book there?
Oh, and then this is another favorite. This is St. Thomas Aquinas' commentary on the Gospel of Matthew. So we had Matthew in the lectionary this last year, and I was cracking open this commentary with frequency.
Cool. Well, it's interesting because Father Doug is a big fan of St. Thomas Aquinas, and so people who are Thomas Aquinas devotees are called Thomists. And it's interesting that I'm a big fan of Thomas Merton, and so whenever I go around and talk to people, I say, "Oh, this is Father Doug Jeffers. We're both Thomists. He's into Thomas Aquinas, and I'm into Thomas Merton." So for me, one of the books that I go to, this is my go-to right here, or one of my go-tos, and this is an anthology of many of just thoughts of Thomas Merton, quotes from Thomas Merton. And so I've used this for a lot of my homilies. I might give a quote from Merton, and someone might say, "Hey, where'd you get that quote?" And I have to go back to this book to find where I got it from, because they're basically little
well
quotes.
used.
Yeah, look how used this thing is.
Looks very well used.
So I've used this since I was ordained in 2007 for just interesting quotes on different subjects like prayer and contemplation, or let's see what this says
Now,
here.
did Merton write it like this, or is this a drawing together from different?
No, it's an anthology,
Oh,
a
okay.
compilation of his quotes. So it'd be something like this. Let's see what he says here. Every one of us is shadowed by an illusory person, a false self. This is the person that I want to be, but who cannot exist, because God doesn't know anything about him. And to be unknown by God is altogether too much privacy. So that came from New Seeds of Contemplation.
Okay.
So this is one of the books that I go to when I want to just come up with different quotes from Thomas Merton. Another book that I like to go to is Pope Benedict XVI was Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger. And so this is a book that he wrote on the Eucharist. And interestingly enough, for my homily at Christmas 2 Christmases ago, I actually used this very first chapter as the theme of my homily. It's called God with Us and God Among Us. That when you think of the Incarnation and when you think of the Eucharist, it's really God walking among his people, God being near his people. And so this is the kind of stuff that Pope Benedict writes about the Eucharist. I don't know, I find him to be arguably one of the best theologians, maybe the best theologian of the last 30 years in our Catholic Church. So this is a book that I go to a lot, and it's specifically about the Eucharist. And then a book that I'm trying to read, if I can get some free time, is this book by Archbishop Charles Chaput. And he's the Archbishop of Philadelphia. And it's a really cool book. It's called Strangers in a Strange Land, Living in the Catholic Faith in a Post-Christian World. So he writes really interesting things, like he writes this. To borrow a thought from C.S. Lewis, the human person is kind of an amphibian, a creature made by God for both this world and the next, a fusion of spirit and flesh that gives the body special dignity. So it's really interesting how he talks about how being a Christian in a post-Christian world is almost like you're kind of in two different worlds. You're here in, kind of our modern American sensibility, but we're always thinking about heaven to come. So we're like amphibians. We're in and out of two different worlds. So I recommend this book right here, Strangers in a Strange Land by Archbishop Charles Chaput. So these are just a few books that Father Doug and I are, reading right now, or kind of our go-to books. And I want to encourage you to go to Father Doug or myself if you ever want to learn more about books that will be useful for you in your own spirituality. Because obviously we need good theology because we want to be informed as to what God is trying to communicate to us. And we can't figure those things out all on our own. So we need help from other people. So we just finished the Christmas season, and it's so interesting. One of the great gifts that the Christmas season always brings us is the fruitcake that lasts week upon week upon week. So we're like 4 weeks past Christmas right now, and we're still chewing on this fruitcake. I love fruitcake. Always been a fan. This is the Collins Street. Is that right?
I believe so. I believe so.
We're not supposed to say that. Are we supposed to say that? Okay, let's start back again. So, we're finishing up. Let's see here. So we just finished with the Christmas season, and now we find ourselves in ordinary time. But one of the gifts that just keeps on giving from the Christmas season is the ubiquitous fruitcake that we have here. So we've got a fruitcake that's been with us for about 4 weeks now, and I'm still enjoying it. I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
So
I don't know if I've ever had fruitcake before.
Well, it's delicious.
Is this a good specimen?
Yeah, I'd recommend the one with the candied cherry on top.
Oh, yeah, that's very nice.
That's it for Coffee with the Collars. We'll see you all next week.